Well, a study by the Global Center for Academic Research has found that Gauteng residents approve of the several service delivery and job creation projects introduced by Premier Panyaza Lesufi. The agency's King Costa joins us now for more on that study. Good to have you, King Costa, and thank you very much for your time. Talk to me about the background of this research and what is the problem that you were trying to solve?
Greetings to you and greetings to the viewers at home. Right. So what happens is that first I must just declare that we are qualitative researchers, and our role is to actually explicate the role or the purpose of qualitative research and how it can actually help solve complex problems. And those problems, how can they be actually used to help citizens to come up with right decisions. So this is a narrative that comes from our first conference earlier this year, and it's been going on. And so one of the things that we needed to do is to understand how and at what level does Gauteng government communicate its achievements to the citizens. Simply because during the State of the Nation address, State of the Province address earlier this year, the Premier representing the government declared achievements in 4 or 5 priority areas, but our study looked at the area of crime, the area of safety and security, youth employment, and economic development, including education. So we wanted to understand these things that they say they've achieved. They've achieved implementation, for instance, of significant measures in mitigation of crime. Although we know that crime is so massive and it happens a lot all over the country, but specifically there have been these incidents that have been reported even recently of crime. Yeah. So what is government and to what extent are they meeting the promise of these commitments they made to the legislature when during the State of the Province address? Right. So we wanted to understand to what extent do people understand what they do? And how receptive are they of the strategies and the mitigation strategies? And then we also wanted to understand the levels of communication that Gauteng government uses to engage and communicate to the citizens.
So let's talk about what you are finding here. Firstly, the transparency of the process in terms of who you're speaking to, right? Their political allegiance or alliances, and the demographics that you're speaking to. Are these just normal people in Gauteng? Are they in political parties? Are you speaking to ANC people? I mean, how do you come to the conclusion that these people are accepting of these programs and they are appreciating of these several programs being introduced?
Right. So while this study is still at its explorative stage, and we are sharing the insights. So the demographics or the profile of our sample at the moment looked at the people that are aged between 18 and 65. And we went through the 5 regions of Gauteng and even to the outliers. And we wanted to understand, let me clarify this. We did not look at political parties because the study was not directed at them. It was directed at the citizens. How are they engaged in terms of communication that government does towards them with regard of the achievements they've stated that they've actually achieved at the State of the Province address?
So these are people, in your view, that understand, for example, something like what the EFF would be saying, these could be temporary measures, that these could disappear in 12 months?
Oh, they could, or they could be projected over a period of time, depending on what government says. But what we wanted to understand, in the midst of so much crime that we are hearing, in the midst of so much unemployment, and in the midst of so much that is happening within education, what do the people know? Do they know, for instance, when you talk about schools of specialization, their purpose and all that, and the values that are attached there, that would be in the education sector. When you talk about, and I get back again to crime because it's actually what we are seeing. These interventions that have been placed, including crime prevention wardens and also using technology to monitor and mitigate crime. To what extent do the people understand, and what does it mean? Because qualitative research is always about the meaning. What would these interventions mean to them as societies?
So what is the chance of misalignment in how these things are evaluated in terms of what government is trying to communicate to the public and what the public perceives these projects to be?
Yeah, so a lot of misalignment. What we found out is that as much as government is using social media engagement, but the impact, or before I go to the impact, the level of engagement was not to that extent as much as in all these areas, in crime, in safety and security, youth employment, economic development, and education. We found out that people have got a working level, and we wanted to understand what is this level of awareness that we have. And it was because if you look at, for instance, economic productive societies, these would be people who are young. So these are the people who are on social media, for instance. So they get that information. But whatever they get on social media is not enough because other people have got limitations of data and they're in rural areas. So what do they use? So they use the radio, for instance, and they believe that what comes out of particularly state radio or some of the established media, they believe that they can authenticate messages. But what we also found out that, and it's a failure of many governments as well, to keep to the promise. If you've said you're going to do something to the people, then you need to continually keep to that promise. Yeah. That seems to be a little bit lacking. But as far as communication, as far as awareness of achievements that have been declared during the State of the Province address, we found out that there is functional awareness. It varies to what extent, and it varies based on the target. So if you would be talking about, for instance, a township, and we looked into township because it's exploratory. We've not necessarily covered the entire demographics, but we looked at the townships because the study is ongoing, is not complete. So it's just the exploration at the moment to give us a dipstick of understanding which way we should go.
So, I mean, there are two questions really that would be key here. One, do people feel safer with Panyaza? Is that what they're reflecting? That's one question. Two,
that's what they are reflecting.
Do people who have been roped into the Nasi iSpani feel this is economic development or empowerment?
Yeah, so Nasi iSpani is just one of the projects that Gauteng government is doing. As a matter of fact, what we found out, which was interesting, was the fact that there seemed to be awareness mainly of the premiers. The premiers become a brand to the people, and I think it's commonly that every time we go there, they would say "hoi hoi." So he's become a brand to these societies that we looked at. And so Nasi iSpani is one. But remember as well that Nasi iSpani has not been achieved in terms of the outcomes. It's been achieved in terms of the launch. And so we must be seeing now, if you've enrolled a certain number of, and these would be mainly young people who are still looking for skills, for instance, to what extent now are they fed communication, stages, levels, where do they start, and what is going to happen? So there ought to be a continuation of communication to them so that even those that did not get enrolled, because we're talking about massive populations, those that did not get enrolled, but at least they can now, start to have trust. When government says they're going to do this, there's a communication and they can hear that there is, those that are enrolled are aware. They are not in a state where they don't know. For instance, if people applied, they would need to know now. So what's the next level? So we find out that they are happy with what is happening because they are being communicated to.
Right.
But Nasi iSpani is just one project. But we found out as well that there were quite a number of pockets of projects that are done. If it's not Nasi iSpani, but youth are still engaged in initiatives such as entrepreneurship, for instance.
Right. King Costa, let's leave it there for today. I'm completely out of time. CEO of the Global Center for Academic Research and conference chair of the upcoming Research Methods Conference. Much appreciated. Thanks for coming on.